All right, though it's June 26th, I thought I'd reach back just a few weeks and read a column I did for Splice, where I write weekly, um, on Joe Biden, Rattletrap. All right. I mean, they're about to be the first Democratic debates this week. And I guess I would urge you not to hear what you suspect Joe Biden is trying to say, but listen to what he actually does say. All right, because the verbatim transcripts are embarrassing. Charles Sanders Peirce, and others have appealed to a principle of conversational charity. Which makes it possible for us all to understand each other. The way Peirce expressed it was that we must suppose that most of what other people say is true. Another principle of conversational charity is that we, tend to compensate for the grammatical shortcomings, the ums and the ohs in conversation that wouldn't pass muster in a written context. We kind of infer what people are trying to say often from the fragmentary or constantly rolling revisions of what people do actually say. But this can go too far, and you can pretend that someone is making sense when they're really not. Michelle Goldberg had a somewhat similar column in the New York Times, I think last week, where she went to a Joe Biden event and she listened to what he actually did say and she quoted it rather than inferring what he might mean. And it was devastating, just the incoherence. And she actually took some grief for that, like on cable news, as I watched. I think on MSNBC, somebody was urging her and us to pull together to beat Trump, and this divisive criticism of Democrats for each other was counterproductive. But I suggest that way lies political self-destruction. In the, these shortcomings are going to be all too clear, and if you can't even mention them, you're going to walk into a general election with a really incompetent candidate, I think. All right, so it's high summer out here by the Lattimore Creek. Suddenly, the insects are invading, and the presidential candidates too. My printer's not working, and so there's various words are left out here. Anyway, whatever. I'm going to infer what I actually wrote in some cases from the printout. Joe Biden Rattletrap. Why, people often wonder, do I tend to roll my eyes at the name Joe Biden? He's so lovable and so electable, and he allegedly has that common touch that brings working class white people out to the polls. One apparently wants to have a beer with him, as we used to put it. Great resume, former chair of the Senate Foreign Relations and Judiciary Committees, vice president, etc., etc. And he has a compelling personal story of suffering, which makes it possible for him to understand the suffering of Americans like me. All right. But I think of Joe Biden, first of all, as a rattletrap, a flibberty-gibbet. All right, I meant to look up the correct pronunciation of flibberty-gibbet, a word that first delighted me in junior high school or something, okay, like when I ran into it. So I use, various excuses to work it in. But I think it's the perfect word to describe Joe Biden, flibberty gibbet, as I'm pronouncing it. He's constantly talking and only very intermittently making sense. He displays a quality one sometimes sees in politicians, a sort of social desperation. He needs other people to like him, and he says whatever seems to help that happen at the moment. He doesn't speak from an inner core of conviction, but from an overwhelming need to be smiled at by whomever he's talking to. Also, I don't think he's particularly bright. But I also want to acknowledge some good moments. Early in 2012, before Obama had managed to endorse gay marriage, Biden did it for him in a CNN interview and forced Obama's hand. It was a sort of beautiful moment in the history of spin, as David Axelrod tweeted that what the VP said, that all married couples should have the same legal rights, is precisely POTUS's position, which was pitiful. Then Obama endorsed gay marriage, way late, but some years before Hillary Clinton did, for example. He said that he probably would have endorsed gay marriage before the election anyway, but Biden had changed the schedule. Now, when Biden endorsed gay marriage, he did it in a flibberty gibbet manner. Quote, I just think that the good news is that as more and more Americans come to understand what this is all about, it is a simple proposition. Who do you love? Who do you love? That almost manages to formulate the gay rights talking point of that moment. You can't help who you love. Born this way or something. Then he went on to describe the source of his profound realization, Biden's awakening. I think, quote, I think Will and Grace did more to educate the American public than almost anything anybody has ever done. Okay, but nevertheless, it was a key moment because it got Barack off his ass to endorse gay marriage. At any rate, I'm going to keep yapping randomly until everyone loves me approach is precisely what has gotten Biden into difficulties here and there. It's not that I was particularly enthusiastic about Biden in 1988 as he ran for the Democratic nomination against Michael Dukakis, Paul Simon, Al Gore, Richard Gephardt, Jesse Jackson, and so on. But I did wave him off semi-permanently after he arrived in Iowa and gave a speech plagiarized from the British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock. Biden did not swipe little slogans or formulations. He swiped Kinnock's life story, and he did it with great passion and intensity and falsity and incoherence. In a widely celebrated speech, Kinnock had asked, Why am I the first Kinnock in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university? Why is Glennis, that's Kinnock's wife, the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations to be able to go to university? Okay, all right, that's a long time. Was it because all our predecessors were thick? Okay, that has a certain charm, and it makes a certain point. And people liked it and remarked on it. Here's what Biden said. Why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family ever to go to a university? Why is it that my wife, who is sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college? Is it because our fathers and mothers were not bright? Is it because I'm the first Biden in 1,000 generations to get a college and a graduate degree that I was smarter than the rest? Okay, so that's the only reason that's not a perfect plagiarism is because the Biden's reading is totally incompetent. And he says that, just the logic of Biden's formulation, Why is it that he's smarter than the rest of the Bidens? Because he's the first Biden in 1,000 generations to get graduate and, postgraduate degrees. Okay, which Kinnick did not add. Take in that last sentence in short and try to figure out what has supposedly happened because of what. Is it because I'm the first Biden in 1,000 generations to get a college and a graduate degree that I was smarter than the rest? He's telling you that he's smart and he has graduate degrees, which he will relentlessly tell you shit like that. But he's doing it in someone else's words while definitely showing that he's not smarter than the rest. Apparently, a number of Bidens in various generations had gone to college, and the idea that this theft from Kinnick was inadvertent is ridiculous, unless the person doing the stealing is the sort of person who can forget who they are in an ecstasy of self-aggrandizement. That's precisely the sort of person Biden is. Speaking of graduate degrees, Biden was also caught in law school plagiarizing a law review article and acknowledged his guilt for purposes of the disciplinary proceeding. However, he said he just omitted a citation and that, quote, my intent was not to deceive anyone, for if it were, I would not have been so blatant. First off, there's never been a more blatant plagiarism than the Kinnick thing. And second, as a professor, I am aware that this is exactly what students say when caught cutting and pasting whole passages or papers, despite all the pains taken to convey the basic concept of adequate citation. And of all the defenses that Satan whispers into the ears of malefactors, I would never be that stupid, is no doubt the worst on multiple grounds. Now, I am going to find it extremely difficult to support anyone who voted for the Iraq invasion and the Patriot Act. And I think a lot of people who made those votes, including Biden and Hillary Clinton, knew they were terribly wrong and cast them anyway because they thought opposing these things would end their political ambitions. Nor were they obviously wrong. Compare the sad case of Senator Russ Feingold, the sole senator to vote against the Patriot Act, and he was never sort of heard from again. If Biden hadn't lost me already, over and over though, he certainly would have lost me in 2005, when, as a senior member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, he questioned Samuel Alito during the latter's confirmation hearings for the Supreme Court. Okay, so he's got 30 minutes. He talks. All right, I posted a video, like I clipped a video on C-SPAN of the relevant bit, or his whole questioning of Alito, the first round. I'll link it on the YouTube video. It's linked in the piece too in Splice. He's got 30 minutes. He talks. He takes virtually the whole time spinning around in a verbal soup, saying absolutely nothing and asking no questions. He gets to one half-assed question around 4 minutes. Ian spins randomly for another 8 minutes, mangles his way through an account of a case that Alito decided as a circuit court judge, and then sort of gets to another question. But it's not any kind of coherent question either. Through the whole thing, he rattles on in random sentence fragments. Or it's a little worse than this. He hits Alito with a series of disingenuous observations meant to be disarming. As in, I don't think anyone thinks you're a man lacking in integrity. But then he goes on to hint over and over again that Alito obviously is such a man. People are puzzled, he keeps saying over and over again. The whole performance is dishonest, or it would be, if it made any clear points or addressed any clear questions to the witness. Really, he wants to tell you that his son went to Penn. This is in the context in which you're examining someone for a lifetime appointment to the highest court in the United States. He wants to tell you that he himself spoke at Princeton recently. Then he starts talking about basketball and crew and says things like, I remember there was a great disavowing, as Alito sits there and tries not to roll his eyes. I have two kids who went to Ivy League schools, says Biden, really his main point. A rattletrap. In short, a flibberty gibbon, a fool, but electable. All right. Nominate someone else. Democrats, okay? You don't want to go down the tubes with Uncle Joe, all right? Later.